I do. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Voyagers of Nera dev stream. We're two of the developers that
Ooh.
are working on a seafaring survival crafting game called Voyagers of Nera. Every 2 weeks, we have this dev stream on top of some other stuff, like talking in our Discord and dev blogs and stuff, to talk about one, a bunch of the stuff that's happening for the game as we're working on it, and two, deep dives into like various topics that people have expressed interest on. Like, so in the past we've talked about a lot of like how we make art for the game, how we like build some of the environments. Preview: next dev stream is going to be about the second biome. We're going to have Christina and Kyle back, who gave us the walkthrough of the Embrace, to give us sort of a walkthrough for the Reef, which is our second biome. Huge, sort of like coral cliffs. A lot of the general theme of it is like a whole new mode of movement. That's where you get the glider in the game. And so getting to see a lot of that, because there's been so much art coming in for that and a lot of really fast iteration on the layout for the space, playtesting. So that'll be a really cool one. So definitely check it out. I think that one's also just like, if you play the demo and you're like, whoa, this is like a cool space, it's a lot more of that. But yeah, today we're going to be talking about two things mostly. The first is we actually just wrapped up a playtest with our Discord crew over the last like 4-ish days, and we're going to talk about some of the results we started to see from that. And then the second is talking about like the longer relationship with playtesting that we're trying to build, where we wanted it to be from like the very start of the studio, the journey in trying to pursue that, and where we're at now. And same thing as always. We're just gonna be like talking about stuff. If you have questions, like throw them up in chat. Just super happy to like talk, and it feels honestly really good to have the demo out there, and for so many more people to like have some insight into like what we've been working on, and for people to like actually just be able to play the game in the demo. So we're really excited to sort of keep that going and keep sort of talking back and forth and sharing what we're working on, because the spoiler alert for a lot of this is like a lot of that comes from the feedback that we get. In fact, a lot of it is like directly fueled by the feedback that we get. And so we're trying to figure out how to expose that back out. Wow, a couple more folks. Hey, Grace. Um, how many more biomes would you like to have by 1.0? Actually, that's not the question I thought it was, actually. Because by early access, we want to have 3 full biomes to go through. By 1.0, kind of TBD. I mean, I'd
But about
ballpark it like
5 is
like probably, yeah,
currently.
like 5. I think that's probably another good chunk of content. But we're gonna learn a bunch during early access, and we want to be open to what we're gonna learn there. But like definitely some more new content. Can we get 30 biomes? Well, when we
Close.
share with you our 10-year roadmap, uh, I
That's
mean,
for
like,
Voyagers of Nera too.
yes. um, oh, thanks, guys. Appreciate all the support. Like a biome, I think as a set is like such a common like, oh, there's like a juicy whole new thing of a chunk of things to get in the game. So we like for sure know that we're going to be grouping some of our content around that as we go forward. But still a lot to figure out in terms of just how many of those, the size of them. Certainly, there's like a lot of stuff that we're learning from going from one biome to two. Let's see. Call dibs on the turtle biome. This turtleception you're attempt. Oh, actually, maybe I meant to tell you this. Do you see right here? I've tried to do a little more home decor, more Nira-ing of our home decor. Got our first ever fan art there. My mother-in-law literally took a business card for me and made me a plate with our logo on it, which is such a cool gift. And this 3D print that a member of our team made using the turtle statue that you probably recognize. um, Grace says, "Bring back the Great Wood." That is the current plan for the biome after.
Yeah, it's Biome 3 now. It was originally going to be Biome 2, but we had some swapping around that we did.
Yes, yes. Nira, you missed the last playtest. All good. We're gonna tell you about it right now. Oh my god, this turtle rallying is can't be contained. Here, Steph, I'm gonna click
Oh,
on
so
you
yeah,
so
was
that you
that the
can.
segue?
Yeah. Let's jump into
Oh,
it because we
that
got a lot
does
of
make
content.
more sense for you to click. I was like, oh, like, do I watch the stream and like
No,
there's
no,
a
no, no,
delay?
no,
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 this
no.
makes more sense. Awesome. Yeah, so first we'll kind of talk about our recent playtests and the feedback and the things we're kind of thinking of coming out of that, and also just some of recapping for people like Nira who missed the last playtest, what was even in that. So we'll go over some of that, and then we'll talk about playtesting generally and what's on the horizon. But so in this recent one, we had a lot of changes directly aimed at things we heard from people playing the demo on our feature upvote, in our Discord channels, through direct feedback given, through watching streams actually of people playing, and trying to like understand what we were seeing was happening. So a lot of the changes are really, really directly aimed at how can we make people not bounce off the game the first time they like load it because they saw something or there wasn't this feature that they expected and or needed to play. So things like keybinds was a good example of something actually we were a little surprised by when we launched the demo, exactly how many people needed this feature to be able to play. So it was a really great learning and we got a lot of great feedback. But so some things like that in the playtest were also some changes to our unstuck functionality so that it was like a little friendlier, because we definitely got a lot of feedback about our implementation of it where it killed you and took all of your stuff. People were pretty sad about that. So we made a little bit of a friendlier change there. Like I mentioned, we added key binding support. So we actually had that in our community playtest for the first time in this recent playtest, and we'll have some even more updates to it in the upcoming one to fix a lot of the bugs that were with it. We made some big changes to hunger, just generally like the system and like how it worked, based off of a lot of the feedback. And we're still getting a lot of great feedback and have some more changes coming up even in the next playtest. And we also did some big overhauls to our crafting and refining UIs. We saw a lot of players having a lot of trouble and confusion like navigating those. So we made a lot of updates towards that. Yeah, McManus, a lot of quality of life updates. That's basically our whole milestone was aimed at like what is hurting people the most while playing and what should we do before we, we can always move on to like more content, and we were kind of doing that all the time. But really taking a step back and being like, what are the things making it not fun to play the game right now that are not new content, basically, and really trying to improve the overall experience. We also did do some like visual changes too, so it wasn't all just like functional or like game balance related, but a lot of feedback that we got was around like the liveliness of the world, and there weren't like enough like kind of things. Oh yeah, you might have to click the gifts,
Yeah, I have
Michael.
to click them to get them to go.
There weren't like enough things in the world kind of like floating or existing, and it felt like a little empty. So we added some like ambient particles. We added bubbles under the water. We added more sea foam to the waves to try to make it feel a little bit more like lively in the world. I think that bottom gif is the sea foam one. Oh,
Yeah.
I think my head blocks it on your stream
Oh no.
cutout.
Okay. Yeah.
My
Thank
head
you.
is too big. My biggest fear.
Thank you.
Um, and sorry to yank you around. If we go to the top one too, we also got a lot of feedback about combat. We couldn't do as much as we wanted here, honestly. We had a lot more changes and the feedback that we wanted to act on, so we'll have to try to get to at some of it another time. But hitting targets was something we even felt it a lot actually before we shipped the demo. We were like, this kind of feels really janky. You have to like dodge roll back into place a lot, and it feels like you're constantly readjusting. So we took some time to like add some like motion warping is what the system is called. So it kind of sucks you to your target a little bit within a certain range, helps you stick on them, helps you not like go past them. Um, oh yeah, Grace mentioned the new hair. Yeah, we have long hair now. Finally, a long hair option with jiggle physics and everything. It's beautiful. Um, so those are a lot of the changes that were in the playtest. Yeah, all directly like from direct suggestions, community feedback, or things that we observed that people especially were having a lot of trouble with. Um, but we still have a lot of improvements to do, both in some of the changes themselves. Michael, you might want to refollow me on the Miro.
I
I'm scrolling
tried
around
so
again.
hard not to call them jiggle physics in our patch notes. It's cloth and hair physics, all right?
Come
We're not dead or aliving our way
on.
through this, okay?
It does jiggle. What can I say? Um,
Uh,
uh,
oh, it also works for Nira, to your question, like the skirts and like the long like sort of like skirt pieces and stuff. The cloth works there too.
yes,
Yeah.
true. Um, Also, we have first time chat just since we're in the chat mode. First time chat from, I'm not going to be able to pronounce this,
Ooh,
Erythros Noya.
wow,
Uh,
that seems really good.
Welcome. And thank you for the kind words. I
Yeah,
was trying
thank
really
you.
hard. I
That's
was like,
really
that took
nice.
me a minute to chew on. So yeah, some things we learned though. So yeah, like we said, we kind of, every time we ship a build, even if we have changes that we think people want and we think are going to be good, we always get feedback and there's always room to improve them. And sometimes, we are doing this exercise, I guess, between we get feedback and sometimes it's really direct suggestions, like, why don't you just do this? And that's sometimes a really hard problem in game development because you can't just always just do this. Sometimes like it doesn't fit in the system. Sometimes there's actually like plans coming up that players like don't know about. So they're giving this feedback, but they don't know that there's other things that are going to kind of like impact that. So we're always kind of doing our best of like translating the problem or the need that players are presenting us into what we think is the most important thing to add to the game. But that means sometimes we put something in and it's falling short of something that was actually the problem, or new problems come up, or there's just some improvements. Um, so some of what we learned and we wanted to kind of share. Hunger, like I said, we made a lot of improvements. We were trying really to create a system that was a little less harsh, I think, and especially less like unduly harsh than it was before. But still present the kind of like need to like plan and prepare to go on adventures and to like actually, I guess, be taxed in the ways that make sense for the context of the game. A lot of the complaints and feedback were around, I'm just trying to like build in my base, dude, and I'm like starving to death. Or if I AFK for like 5 minutes, I like literally die. So we're trying to alleviate a lot of that feedback, but not take away all of the consequences of experiencing hunger and still give need for like systems like food and other stuff like that. So we made a bunch of those changes, but still, obviously, there are penalties and maybe they're too harsh. So we asked a lot of questions about like, were people still feeling the need to manage it constantly? How oppressive it was? Were the penalties like sensical or correct? And we got a lot of great feedback around that. So we're definitely going to be working on some tweaks to things like how fast you starve, which came up a lot. How much food volume you need to eat. Like, people have to eat like I think like 10 vegetable skewers or something to be able to like um, fill themselves back up. And yeah, so we are making a lot of changes coming up for that. And also reevaluating like some of how it impacts the player stats too, because that was, I think, another thing that people felt a lot was that some of the stat penalties were a little harsh. So we're still working on that, but it was great to get it in front of people and to get some early feedback on it. Enemies targeting changes were well aimed, but and made it, I think, a big difference in terms of like how this feedback was before this playtest. Yeah, you like my joke, Michael? I saw that. um, Made a big impact though, I think, on how players perceived the quality of combat. Like it was more fluid and it felt like better overall. But still, actually, some weapon types even in our game weren't hitting the same bar that now some of the ones that were working well are. We're actually not sure yet why this is happening. We're a little surprised of why the spear specifically is having so many problems. So we're going to take another look at that. So that was really great. But it was awesome to see that outside of some like rough edges, especially with some weapon types, that combat is feeling better for people. We were really happy to see that. Um, People really appreciating the crafting UI. A lot of suggestions for like additional features and quality of life, but I think before, and some probably data we haven't shown on stream before, is like, I mean, we literally would watch people on streams try to figure out how to use the mana extractor, and we would be like cringing in our chair trying to like be like, is this person gonna figure it out? And inevitably they like wouldn't because it was just like so unreadable. So it's really great to see such a big change from where it was in the previous build to people rating it really positively, really understanding how to use it. And then unstuck, both this was kind of a two-prong change. The unstuck feature was something people had a lot of feedback about because it was not very friendly to use. And separately, I mean, the goal ideally should be you never have to use the unstuck button because why would we want you to get stuck? And there were a lot of spots you could get stuck. So we both did a lot of investment into actually some analytics. So now we get data when you use the unstuck button in game, where you used it overlaid on our map. So we can actually be like, why is everybody using the unstuck button in this spot? Like, what's wrong with the spot? Which is really helpful feature for us because it can be really hard to just like look at the whole map. um, and then separately, we overhauled the unstuck feature itself to make it more friendly and actually give you some choice of like, you have a limited use, like totally no penalty unstuck, and you have like a regular unstuck that kind of works the same way it did before, but it tells you and you like actually opt into that, which I think helps. Um, we have a few questions and a few
Yeah.
first-time chatters,
Yeah,
so you
yeah,
want to
yeah, yeah,
pause in the
yeah.
middle.
All the way back
Um,
up. Late night stream. Welcome, by the way. Ask about like what about sidestep for combat, or I guess other
yeah,
combat ideas. Yeah.
this is a good question. We have a lot of combat suggestions. A sidestep is actually one we've talked about a lot, and we do really want to do some like sidestep or back hop or some variations of the dodge that are kind of more responsive to your input, because just dodge rolling forward is kind of like functional, but there's like I think just with the way our combat works, a couple different things you might want to do instead. So that is something we're thinking about, but we have a plan to look at it, but it's a little further out.
And then McManus says, seems like a game where food should be buffs and not hunger. It's funny that you say that
Mm.
because there was just this dialogue we had in Discord about the opposite of like if you can't starve to death, why would I even play this game? Like that's crazy for a survival crafting game. And I think it's honestly a big spectrum. I think there is this sort of like mid zone that we want to end up in where it's like that investment in actually trying to craft things is meaningful prep toward your journeys, but we also don't want it to be like so severe where it's just like, oh, I had to get up to pee and actually like that killed me, or made it so that like I could never stay in base because that moment of downtime actually cost me something really dramatic. So I think a lot of it is down to balance. We're heading into a better spot, but still some work I think we want to do there. Um, so another first comment with fuzzy out of water, which is just hello everyone, hi. um, and then that purple sage. Glad to hear there's improvements in the crafting UI. So maybe
Me
you were
too.
one of the people suffering, deeply suffering from the pains of not being able to read some of the UI.
Yeah, also just to, one thing to tack onto the food buff versus hunger comment too. We actually do also have food buffs in the game. Some of the specialty food gives you food buffs that do things like increase your carrying capacity or give you more stamina or things like that. And I think we'll kind of continue to expand on those systems and maybe even look at just even generically like a well-fed buff. So I think we do want to balance both. We want to incentivize players like positively to eat food and maybe eat certain foods that are kind of like strategically aligned with your intent for the session. And we do also want to have food as like I think a preparatory step. Because at least when we were kind of playtesting, we really craved this like I'm preparing for my adventure and now I'm disembarking and now I'm doing this like arc and at some point, I kind of have to like try to stretch it out as far as I can before I come home. So that's a kind of like feeling we're trying to have. So we do have food buffs and just like neutral food and some penalties for when you're hungry to kind of help incentivize you to continue to like cook and eat. But you don't die anymore. That's kind of the big change. Or at least don't die directly from starving itself, but you have like reduced health and some reduced stamina. So you're kind of incentivized like, hey, if you want to be out in adventure still,
Yeah.
eat some more food. But if you don't, that's cool, go home.
I mean, it's very similar to like how Valheim functions. McManus, you had a broader question around server options, and we're actually, you know, I think that's not super uncommon within survival crafting in particular. We want to offer that. We're like trying to figure out which ones we should try and tackle first and which ones we should grow to over time. But server options are definitely on our radar. We see it as also just kind of a useful way for like letting people pull their own dials for like difficulty and stuff too. Couple new first time chatters. Major Peppy played the demo and last playtest build. Playtest is definitely an improvement. Glad to hear that. Really
Awesome.
glad to hear that. More changes
And
coming soon. Actually, the next playtest is starting next week. So we're going to be right back into it and then updating the demo shortly after that.
Yes. And then we'll probably do a couple more questions before we transition back into some of the stream content. But another question I think that we missed, or just going back up in chat. It's very happy the emergency recall was added, but I was curious why you only get one a session. The main reason for that, and we actually went back and forth on a couple of different versions, like once per session or just like every 20 minutes or something like that. We didn't want that feature to become something that you could exploit in a way, and not that we're super exploit averse in that way, because it is a sandbox survival crafting game. You kind of can't anticipate or control exactly what people are going to do, and honestly you don't want to, because that's kind of where a lot of the fun comes from. But we didn't want it to become this like button that like anytime you're just like in an inconvenient spot, you could circumvent the like challenge of going to the hard to reach spot, getting the cool thing, and adventuring back. So that's part of the reason why we chose that direction. Though we're definitely open to feedback on it. And then kind of tying into the other comment of like server configurations, I imagine someday that that's probably a type of server configuration we would offer, is like not dropping your inventory on death or something like that, because that's like what a lot of games do.
Uh, why don't we keep going? But just the last question. Hello, Kianos Para? Liking and hearing the way you're handling things. Out of curiosity, any of these changes will be reflected into the demo. They sure will. So right now we have our Discord crew. If you want to playtest like the even rougher builds, frankly, they're also buggier. So like be warned. But that is like our first big wave of feedback. And right now I think there's probably like our Discord's like 1,800 or so people right now, and I think about 1,300 are signed up for those bi-weekly playtests. We playtest with that crew much more frequently than we plan to update the demo, because the demo is like anyone who finds our game just shows up and can play. So we want to keep that a little bit more stable, and update that at a slower cadence. So the demo we're going to be updating probably for the first time since the December start of it in about like 2 weeks, maybe three. So after that, we'll continue updating it, but it'll still be on a slower cadence than how frequently we play tests with the Discord crew, which I think has a lot more, uh, uh, unpolished goggles that they're used to wearing.
Awesome.
Cool.
So it sounded like you kind of want to move to the
Yeah,
next
I
part.
mean, we just still have a bunch of stuff to talk
Yeah.
about. Okay. So here, I'm gonna take back. I'm gonna be the eyeballs again on Miro. So okay, this is some of the. This is sorry, but this is just gonna be like old man story time a bit. But talking about like what we wanted playtesting, like how we want playtesting to be a critical part of Treehouse, and that was like a lot of our original intent as a studio, and how hard that has been in reality, and now where we're sort of at through that arc of learning over like years. So Ryan, who's been on here, the game director and my co-founder for Treehouse, when we started the studio back in 2020, we had already some like burning beliefs about feedback being like absolutely critical for a game to ultimately be good. And I think there's like this distinction, especially with a lot of indie studios, where it's like often about like, hey, we want to make something that is like the story we want to tell, or like the project that we think should exist. At the end of the day, like that vision has to be part of it. But we also had this like requirement that we walked into all of this with, which is we're here to be professional game devs. Ultimately, why we wake up in the morning is because we want players out there in the wild to have an emotional reaction to our work, for them to love the game, for them to fall in love with what they're playing. And that's the opportunity we have in front of us. So it's not enough to make a cool project that we are excited about. It also has to like create delight in the player that's actually giving us their time, right? And I think, coming from my own background and Steph's background, like we both came from Riot, where we worked on League of Legends, and we were players of League of Legends before we actually worked on the game. It was also kind of beaten into us, which is like all the intent that you might have in the world, all your grand theories and ambitions. If people don't actually like it at the end of the day, then like you didn't actually kind of accomplish your mission, right? Like it's not actually good until players say it's good, until their behavior tells you that they are enjoying it, that they're having a great time with the game, that they're actually having that emotional response that you wanted them to have. And so when we started the studio, we actually did not come in with like, oh man, here's the dream game that we're going to build. We actually prototyped a crap load of different games, and we were taking them through with friends, like with friends who had worked in like research and development, like R&D at other studios. We play tested with a lot of our old colleagues. Like Steph play tested some of our early builds before she was part of the company. And in fact, we dredged up this old video, like the startup stereotype of like, oh, you start in your garage or wherever. Treehouse's garage was a hotel room because I was living in a place where the fridge broke while I was out of town and it flooded and destroyed my kitchen. And so insurance put me up in a hotel room, which ended up being our office for like the first 3 or 4 months of the company's existence. And so this footage is from like playtesting one of those like very first builds. There's me. I
So
might
thanks
have
for the
had more
follow,
hair at the
Tyler
time.
Joga.
That's Mitch. That's the top of Mitch's head, our creative director who has been on the stream as well. And I'm just gonna play this clip, and hopefully it's loud enough.
What if it's too
Oh,
loud?
my ass. Gold. Do I need gold for something right now? Just open it in the box. You can hear Ryan.
Just a wide arcing slash.
Mitch, you're surrounded.
I got this. I have so much fish, so these guys don't stand a chance.
How much iron do I need to
Craft a cutlass.
I
forget it's 10 or 20.
You can probably see it's pretty jank looking. It's as bare bones as possible. And that was a lot of like the desire, right? It's like, how soon can you actually learn something from it? And so that was a lot of like the hope and the intent, and a lot of the way that we started the studio when things were, that was like 4 of us in a hotel room. Is that OG boat game? I don't even know if that one's like the most critically OG boat game. I have a screenshot of that one that I'm gonna pull up in a second. But yeah, there was just a thread in Discord about the name boat game and where it came from. It's like, yeah, we're many iterations in at this point. Thanks, Light Night Stream, for tuning in. Hope to see you at the next one. So the reality in practice is that it's really hard to actually keep doing that. It's really hard to actually stick to your guns and actually be like, we're gonna playtest all the freaking time. It is like the path to truth that we can control. And the truth is, part of the reality is that it's also just not the nature of a lot of how a lot of game companies work. I think early access has sort of made that a lot more apparent to a lot of people. It's like, oh, like there's a real path to success by playtesting like really rough versions of the game and getting feedback. But I would say actually a huge portion of the industry and a lot of like the places we've worked in the past, it's not the natural way to work. Often you've worked on this thing for months or years, and by the time you get feedback, you're sort of like in the how do we polish the last 5% and like just the visual presentation of the last part of it. And so there's a lot of tension in that you can probably imagine, because there's so many things that don't really start to look polished or feel the way you want until you've put hundreds of hours into making it match that vision. And the whole path along that arc, it's crazy easy to talk yourself out of playtesting, because you're constantly sitting there being like, okay, could we playtest this? Like, technically, yes, but we already know what people are going to say, right? People are going to say it's not fun. People are going to say it looks ugly. Oh, like we're going to learn so much more once this other part of the game is also in. Oh, like you can fight, but you have no way to heal right now. So, once we add some healing mechanics, then we'll really know how combat feels. And you're kind of surrounded by so many more ways that you're like, you know what? Playtesting would be a waste of time right now. And you sort of fall into this loop. This is like the most millennial meme I've ever seen of like, sometimes the easiest thing to do is to just playtest is to just call the person or whatever, and you find all these other ways to say that you know. Oh, we played this reference game. Oh, we did a little poll on Twitter or whatever. Oh, like I showed someone the screenshot. I told someone about what they were supposed to do while they were looking over my shoulder. And those just aren't the same as play testing. And they aren't the same as like people that you eventually want to love the game, looking at it and calling out all of its warts and all of its bad points, and uh, crawling through that mud. Um, quick pause in my ranting. This is how much work you put in the environment and lighting. That's really sweet and very consistent with a lot of playtest feedback that we've heard. We've had a couple that have just been consistently like some of the warmest reception, on top of the environment, the art style, the lighting. A lot of the embrace has been some of the most universally like, wow, this is really cool. This is really cool, even compared to the first biome in a lot of survival crafting games I love, which was really encouraging. And yes, I'm glad to hear about the feedback one too, because that's very much the thing I'm going to get to, which is like us coming back to like, dude, we need
It's
this
like
as
we're
a
in our
North
glow up
Star.
era.
Like, yeah, we predicted that this could be the North Star for us, and then all the excuses make that so hard to stick with. And at the end of the day, right, it's about learning, right? And a lot of it is about learning as early as possible. You always stand to learn something, but so much of game making in general is grand ambitions against the reality of how hard or costly or painful it is to make it. So often you can learn much earlier than you might want to learn, when you might want to expose your horribly dirty laundry and then to have someone confirm your worst fears, especially when you're working on something in a cave and you're trying to, to generate some of this optimism and excitement within yourself. I do want to caveat though, feedback is really it's most useful when you have a clear vision going in. I don't super believe of just like, hey, let's put out this thing and then whatever people like, let's just make that. I feel like there's just too many unknowns and too many question marks and too many areas that are just completely not penciled in. You have to come in with this thing that you believe in and these forking paths that hopefully you have some predictions around. And then you watch the reality crash, and that gives you so much more info about the reality of how your intent is playing out. Erythros, the feedback capture, just you wait. There's so much cool stuff that we've been doing that we're going to show you in just a hot sec. And thank you, Nikki.
I know the words are so nice in chat. I'm
I
like,
know it's so
stop.
nice. So when you actually put something into playtest, some feedback, and hopefully over time it becomes more and more as a proportion of the feedback, is what you expect, right? And some of these can be really wonderfully positive confirmations of something that's going really well. Like when the skimmer, I think a lot of that was like Andrew and Ryan, both of which have been on this dev stream before, being like, this would be dope. Andrew's also the only animator on the team, so much of that actually feeling like it makes sense is kind of on him. But once we had that, vibe on team was like, holy crap, this is rad. Like I think the odds were pretty good that when we play tested it, people would also feel like it's rad. And we also came in with like a lot of hopes that the art style would be super positively received. And these things ended up being true. Like even from this is like one of the first implementations of the skimmer, and it was pretty jank. There was no transition animations. It was just like left, right, forward, back. But even then, it felt really awesome. And that started to help us dial in to be like, hey, what is good enough? What is the bar where we can say, hey, we're on the right track. Now we need to make more of it. What is at the quality bar? And it becomes more and more fine-tuned, like the problem space zooms downward. And then on the other end of the spectrum, some feedback is a surprise. Occasionally they're positive surprises, but I think all the ones you remember are the really painful bad surprises. Some of them are super painful, and the reality is, the sooner you hit them, the better. Ideally, you hit it and are also receptive to it. Because that's also the reality, right? Is you might have worked on something for months and believe that it's this awesome thing, and it's real human digestion time to then go from, oh man, this, I thought this was going to be awesome, to, oh, this has real problems that we have to get deep down into the details of. And so some examples of some massive pivots that we've made, in fairness, like our game structure and thesis has changed as well. But some of these, like, at one point the game was a third person game. It was like a third person. Oh wait, this is actually not right. This is isometric to third person. That's the actual right terminology. At some point, this was like a top down game, and the transition to making this third person wrecked everything, right? Like character proportions, camera, everything. A lot of how we were organizing and planning for content in the game all had to change with that. And that was like a pretty painful conversation, right? This is closer to OG boat game. Once upon a time, the entirety of the experience was on a boat, and you would sail on it, you would build on it, you would build this elaborate thing on a boat. And after a while, we kept eating these playtests where people were like, wow, I built this like awesome, beautiful boat. And when I build on it, it's actually making the gameplay crappier because enemies can't pass through a bunch of the things that I built. I feel really bad when I fail, and like my beautiful like scenic balcony area burns down in a fiery blaze. All these things were coming into conflict in such a fundamental way that we were like, oh, the only way to address this is a massive shift. If only we had learned that, if only we had come to grips with that months earlier, would have saved us a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of momentum that we're building in one direction that we ultimately have to shift.
Yeah, I do think looking back on the timeline, I feel like at least my biggest regrets, and I wasn't even here for like all of this journey, because some like that first screenshot is like that was like I think the first build I play tested, but was before I joined, was both not play testing frequently enough. I think was like one just like key regret because we just were going a really long time without getting any info, and then I do think that like per Michael's point, sometimes it's really hard to like recognize in the moment, like, yeah, no, we should just cut bait. Like, this isn't working. That's a really hard call to make. And it's not even always black and white. Like, it's really easy to look now, like 2+ years past that, where we have like what I feel like is a much more awesome game. It's like, cool. Yeah, duh, that was like no brainer. But at the time, it's like, it's like, oh, we were gonna ship this game like in 6 months, and like some people like it, and it's a lot of work, and like, what about our funding? There's a lot of factors, so it's really, really hard actually to like make that call in the moment. But I kind of wish our past selves could have been more decisive, and I think we've learned a lot from that experience, if nothing else.
Yeah. And playtesting more frequently would have been investing in a source of truth. Hopefully a razor with which to have these conversations more frequently. And they would have been, I think, just as painful, but hopefully sooner in the arc. I don't really hate what I'm seeing of the OG boat game. That's very kind. Although I feel way better about our current direction now. Yeah, just some old views of the top down and some of the goofy little characters that we stubbed
But it was
in.
cute. It had its like moments. I think too. I mean, I think probably the biggest problem with it, just like peeking way behind the curtain, is I think we weren't making the thing that we were trying to make. So, like, the way that the game had kind of developed was very different than like the concept we were chasing. And sometimes that kind of happens as you have a thesis and then you have like all of these constraints. Like, well, we have to ship lots of content to it, and like we got to get a lot of replayable hours, and like we have these players that like fishing and these other players that like combat, and we want them to be able to play together. And so I think that like somehow between those constraints we came with what was essentially like a roguelite, I don't know, like dungeon crawler party game. Like if I had to just put 3 tags on it, something like that. But we were trying to make a survival crafting like long-term island building game. And we're like, these are not coming together. So we had to kind of have like a come to Jesus moment where we're like, which one of these do we want to make, and which one of these do we think is like the right bet?
Yeah. Hi, Mr. Miko. Welcome. Um, and ultimately, there are some things when we were talking about, like, really at its heart, the sense of like being a seafaring survival crafting game, the moment of like anticipation of seeing something out there on the horizon. It's like, how do you achieve that in a third person like isometric camera? And so there are a lot of decisions that come in contention. And I think that's the reality of any complicated game, truthfully. But playtesting is a way to sort of force the reality of that to enter your decision making when it's done right. There's some other fun ones. I'm gonna just move on to avoid belaboring the point. But at one point, we were playtesting this, and that boat that you see there is not pilotable. It literally is on a track that just goes in a circle between Adventure Zone and your home base. And that was the faster way to prototype some of that vibe, and I think saved us a lot of time and still gave us a lot of critical lessons long before like boat mechanics were a thing. Okay, all right, long arc. So the dark ages passed. So we pretty much hit this point in 2024, right? Right at the start of 2024, where we're like, hey, we have to hone into this survival crafting game. The vision of what we could build here is becoming more clear, where we really want to tightly bring this toward this seafaring survival crafting game where you go to distant islands, you battle monsters from the sea, you build this beautiful base, and a lot of these remnants of like these old versions of the game we have to be really decisive on, and we have to build this more constrained version, and we believe it can be awesome, we believe we can ship it. And the way we're going to prove that is to put together a refined core loop of the game and put it in front of real people as soon as humanly possible. So I think we literally went from, okay, guys, like here's the refined, like reduced, focused in version of the game in like February is when we started talking about that. And I think we had our first play test with people in like late April, early May. And I think I want to say Meepy was there as one of those early playtesters. I want to say Grace was in one of the first one of those. El Ramos was one of those. Oh my god, El Ramos heard the story, um, and pretty quickly we're like, oh my god, we're like so glad we're playtesting this frequently, because so quickly we can say, hey, we think that this is getting into a good direction. These parts of the games are working. What do other people think? What do people who are like super experienced playing all these other survival crafting games say? They can be pretty knowledgeable and pretty harsh judges. And guess what? When we're out on live, people are probably going to be pretty harsh judges. So like, why not get that input as early as possible and start benefiting from that? And also actually like getting to talk with you guys and actually getting to gather that feedback are skills as well, which we've had to learn a ton of new tricks, a ton of new tools to figure out how to take in input and share it back more effectively. Still a lot to learn there, truthfully. But that developed into being like, we are going to play test every 2 weeks. Come hell or high water, that's our plan. And so we just started to math out, hey, we feel way better about this getting to good, not if we play test once every milestone, but actually, what if we had like 12 more play tests before the end of the year? And we started to feel better and better in that, not just toward turning into a better game, which is ultimately this culminated in the demo and us feeling like this is our most polished, most refined, best sort of take on the game that we've had so far, and we want to put it in front of as many people as possible. But also sort of preparation to run a live game, because this sort of rapid back and forth and like hearing feedback while we're planning the next thing is also just the reality of having a game shipped. And those are muscles that we're building in real time too. And you guys have been a really critical part of that. Pretty much since last May, this constant playtests have put us in like such a better spot in terms of being able to have something go wrong and then figure out how to solve against it, deal with bugs at the same time as development, figure out how we make sure the quality remains high, even when we're building something new or intentionally changing something pretty big. Okay, anyways, that's the longer arc of how playtesting was like an OG philosophy for us. How we went through like these hard times where we drifted away from that, and I think ultimately a lot of the times when we weren't playtesting felt like the more painful, like lost in the darkness type times. And then the times where we've been playtesting a lot more have felt like investing in this compass where we can hear from real people whether this is working out the way we want, and then using that to give ourselves fuel and direction for what we want to build next. And we are now neck deep in working that way, and we want to go even further. Whew.
I know, that was a long one.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, let's hop to something Michael mentioned too is we're always trying to like improve how we do this playtesting process, how we get your feedback, how we actually make sure that makes it into the game. And that's something that just from our backgrounds and also just like a lot of studios don't do this, that we're learning a lot about in our first attempts to actually like understand what does it mean to like develop actively like with the community. Um and so I think are you following me again, Michael?
Oh, nope.
So we have a lot of tools, both that we've like found and companies we've sourced and all kinds of things to like try to be like, how do we get this info in a way that like we can manage as a small team? Speaking of that early playtest group, I miss those days, but we used to like literally have a treehouse person like sit in a lobby of 4 to 5 people like with them and like watch them play the game and record it and ask questions like directly. And
That's
honestly,
how
it's like really awesome.
that's how I met Elmo, Grace,
Yeah.
I think Nikki as well, Lunaria as well. There were some weeks though where legitimately I spent 20 hours a week just in those calls. Like it was not
Yeah.
gonna scale.
Yeah, it was really hard to manage, and it's also really left a lot. You got different kinds of value. Like there's a different value in having that face-to-face conversation, but also like really hard to share that with like multiple people and like to have the team sit through like 4-hour VODs of people playtesting the game. Um, so while I miss those days, I only miss them a little bit. It was a lot easier on us to like be able to like get your feedback and actually make sure that it gets to the spot that it needs to be, which is kind of the whole point, really. So we've really tried to scale up how we get this feedback and like what kinds of forums we use, as well as how we like communicate to you guys about like what is happening. And so we just kind of took some screenshots of some of the things that we use and kind of some of the way we source some of this feedback. And I think probably a lot of the ways that you guys know me actually is through some of these forums that are pictured here. I organize a lot of the external playtests. I help with like a lot of the messaging for it. I'm usually in the Discord chat with you, communicating like, "Hey, the new build's up, and here's what's in it, and let me know if you have questions." So like obviously just being active in Discord with you is like one way that we do that, and I try to do that a lot. I'm also the person that writes like the questionnaires for most of our playtest builds. So like the surveys that you're filling out that are so helpful to the team, and thanks to everybody who filled out the one for the last playtest. And if you're in this chat and you didn't fill it out, please fill it out if you playtested, because we really want your feedback. But I was reading through that feedback literally yesterday and putting stuff directly into our Jira backlog, so like actually analyzing that, sharing that with the designers, talking through that survey is super helpful and has been a really good tool. Even though originally when we rolled it out, we were like, oh, but what are we gonna do like if we can't like have the conversations with people? But luckily the surveys have turned out to be a really good tool. But to supplement that, we actually also have a tool, like a video analysis software that we've been using, where you can actually like upload VODs. So we have some either public clips or even like volunteer VODs that community members have sent us, that we can like upload, and it'll actually like source analysis across all of the VODs that you upload and like bucket them into bugs, into areas of improvement, to like positive critiques, which is really cool. And it will actually like link to you like the timestamp at which like the person said the thing that the feedback is like correlated with, so you can actually like go and watch like the event happen in the video, which is really awesome. Ryan, our game director, actually also stood up our feature upvote board just before our demo went live. I think literally the day before, because we were like, how do we get all of these people who like are just barely going to even know that we exist to like fill out feedback and tell us what they want to see. So we have our feature upvote board, which has been really, really helpful. Steam discussion forums. We're in there commenting all the time, really trying to like make sure we're getting this feedback and it's making it back to the team. But so, you know, we get all this feedback. Obviously there's like steps between, like Michael said, kind of like what we're currently working on and what data we're getting about what people need, which is always kind of a hard thing to like balance. So there's always a kind of decision making layer that has to happen. You know, we discuss it as a team. Like I'll reach out to designers directly and be like, hey, have you read the survey? Look at the section. Here's the questions about your feature. Here's the feedback themes I'm seeing. Like, what do you think? You know, we'll actually talk through those feedback points directly and like translate that into our work priority. Me and Ryan are constantly, and we actually changed our roadmap to reflect this because we were like, how are we going to balance intaking and using the feedback we're getting alongside feature development? We felt really uncomfortable trying to just juggle it all the time because we were worried that we were going to do like a disservice to the improvements that we needed to do based off of the feedback. So we actually changed our roadmap literally so we have content releases and like improvements releases basically. So we literally have it structured in our development that like every other milestone essentially we are focusing on either new content to expand the game or features directly from feedback that we want to like add to the game or use to improve the game, which has actually helped a lot. That's why you see this one that we did the playtest for just recently. That was one of those milestones focused just on improvements. Sorry, Michael, I'm trying. I know we're a little late.
No, it's cool.
And then yeah, something we're still experimenting with and trying to like learn how to do better is actually how do we kind of make the circle where we're like, cool, we did things, we promise, we hear you, and we're actively putting it into the game. But like the only way that you get satisfaction from that is like if you actually know that that happened. Which is something, especially again being a small team, we don't have like a lot of like social media visibility. It can be hard in like Discord and stuff like that to actually, I don't know, even catch the message at the right time to like know that the thing happened. And there's a lot of changes that go in, honestly, like hundreds and hundreds of change lists go into like every build. So even just like actually knowing sometimes that a feedback piece got addressed, even sometimes for us is hard because like developers will see a feedback and immediately go do it. And so like we might miss it. So we're still kind of actually experimenting with it. And if you have any ideas, that we would love to hear that. But you know, we've tried to incorporate and call that out in our patch notes, for example. Our sneak peeks is another thing that we've been trying to like do more of, especially when it's related to things that we know people are interested in or have asked for. Actually, this week, based off of Michael's feedback, I added a bunch of statuses to our feature upvote board because it just said like under consideration and planned before, but now we actually also have like in development and community testing. So hopefully that'll be a way that you can see like the kind of status of your feedback as it's like moving along. Michael does dev blogs. And is actually going to maybe boot up video patch notes soon so you can get a little bit more insight into like what changes are happening and catch that as video content instead of reading through the patch notes. So we're always trying to like make sure that you know that you're heard and like see what changes are coming in, and hopefully you can, you know, you can come play test with us and give us even more feedback. So that's the thing we're trying to like work on the most, I think, is both how do we act on the feedback and how do we share back with you guys that, you know, the things are moving.
This in-game clock one is really funny because one of like this wasn't like the hottest burning issue, but it just kept coming up all the time of, oh man, I wish I could sleep through the night, or like, oh my god, nighttime is so long and so dark. And like slowly in pieces, like nighttime's a little less dark, it's shorter. We now have an in-game clock that we were just playtesting yesterday, and you can now sleep through the night. And it's like the best case scenario would be like you felt this pain in December, you know that we were all over that, and like, dang, that's such a good point. Or like, you know, some of that's not even a surprise. We're just like, oh, we didn't have time to do it, but like, dang it, because we didn't do it, it's actually like this major pain point and this expectation that we're missing. And then the way we can go back and say, hey, everybody who saw that and gave us feedback on that, that's fixed. Thank you. We weren't actually going to do that until later, but we did it sooner because your feedback made it really clear that that was going to be like a big plus to your ability to enjoy the game and hopefully help us get to the next layer of feedback. That part is hard. That part's super hard to figure out how to sort of communicate that back and close the loop, like Steph said. So if you guys have ideas, hit me up. Gonna try and do patch notes. The pool jumping, we'll see. It's
Come
still super
on.
cold.
Why do you even have a pool if you're not going to jump in it for content?
Because I'm too cheap to heat it in any way. It was 50 degrees or whatever when I jumped in before, or 40 degrees. It's still 40 degrees right now.
You have a sweater. Yeah, I think though, I was trying to scroll up and see if we missed any questions, but actually I think mostly we just got a lot of like, I think, hype about the old OG boat game. But yeah, do you guys have any questions for us? Either, I mean, it could be about like upcoming changes and stuff that we're working on. It could be about any of this playtesting stuff. Really, it's AMA
questions in
time.
general. We got a lot of new time chatters in here that I imagine have only just discovered the game in the last month or two. So would love to answer any question.
What was one piece of feedback that really threw you / surprised you? Oh shoot, I feel like if it was earlier this afternoon, I had this answer too. I think, at least from the demo, some of the most surprising things that came out. I mean, one was definitely like just the prevalence of keybind support requests. And even when you look across like actually other early access games and even other survival crafting games that are even released, a lot of them don't have keybind support. But our audience, I guess, yeah, has a more like a much bigger need for that than we like realized, because we were kind of looking at our competitors and seeing what they offered, and we're like, okay, cool, we want to do this, we like think it's important, but maybe after early access, so we can finish the game. And then once we saw the amount of feedback that came in, we're like, oh god, like this is so much more important than we thought it was. And a lot of people even saying they bounced immediately off the demo because we didn't have that. So that was definitely, I think, a big one. I think the reception of the hunger system, I think we knew it was like a little out of whack, but it seemed very out of whack based off of the feedback we got. And then probably combat, I think, was the other big surprise that came out. Again, I think we don't have the most like deep combat, kind of on purpose. We're like not a super combat focused survival crafting game. I would say there are some like that, like V Rising and Enshrouded, I think, are examples of really A plus like S tier combat, and like that's like their thing. That's like why they exist almost, is like to provide that, which is great. Those games are really awesome for that reason. But we like never intended to be that kind of game. So we're like, okay, cool, maybe more compared to like Valheim and compared to Grounded and some of these other games. But I think we were even falling more short of the bar on that than we thought we were. So those are probably the three biggest surprises to me.
One of my biggest surprises was related to the key binding one, actually, which is the amount of international people that were finding the game on their own.
Oh
Because
yeah.
a lot of our social media and stuff, and like, the OTK Expo and stuff that we were part of is pretty North American centric, right? And we're like, cool, like there's a lot of ways to hear about that being in Western Europe and stuff. But we saw a crap load of interest from Brazil, from the Philippines, from parts of China, Korea, Australia, which was really cool. But that was also a lot of people that were using Azerty keyboards. And it's just like, oh, a lot of default controls are just like instantly painful, like instantly bad. And we're like, oh, okay, wow, that kind of caught us off guard in terms of
Oops.
that being such a big barrier at this stage. On the flip side, it's really cool because even thinking about a lot of like OG theme and like art style decisions that Mitch has been driving for a long time. A lot of the hope was, hey, we want this to be like this beautiful magical seafaring space that we hope can be resonant with like everyone around the world. And there were a lot of lessons and references we were pulling from, and then that's like not weirdly, but it's been proving out to have worked, and for a lot of people to sort of recognize in that something that they find very warm and charming. But that also had some unintended consequences, like, oh, and then you can't use your keyboard to play it.
Yeah,
So
unlucky.
yeah, that was kind of interesting sort of connection point there.
Yeah. Another question. When can we expect or parentheses, can we expect controller support? We get this question a lot. We can expect it. We hope before early access. We have tried to prototype it. Actually, we kind of have like a really rough version working, but it's a little too rough actually. We tried to see if we could do it at the same time as keybinds. So we'll probably have to support it a little bit later. I think there is some built-in Steam like I forget the program name, but controller integration that you can do that will help you. So I would explore that if you're really blocked on that, or if it's really hard for you. But so we do plan to support controllers. We're working on it. I promise.
Is the sun or moon a solid asset? It is not. It is part of a beautifully made skybox that I think Andrew could probably tell you the most about. We were actually just talking about a future like dev stream content of something that would be more like some of the shader work, which is like a really interesting tech art overlap, which is both super artistic and extremely technical that Andrew has been deep diving into, and some of the main places that you'd see that work is in uh, the lighting and the sun and the water material, which is obviously everywhere in our game, and you know both of them are quite complex, but the end result is something that has been getting a lot of love during our playtests.
I like that you didn't read the second part of that, which is the much funnier part of that statement. Didn't have enough time to build high enough to see if the sun was a solid object.
Oh.
That's so funny. What's an upcoming change that you're super excited about? Either excited about playing or excited to see the feedback on? The new biome, for sure. I feel like it's one of the coolest things that I think that's upcoming. We just play tested it a ton this week, and it looks so cool, and I'm super excited to see people's reactions to it. It's like such a different vibe, I think, than like the base biome, like even in a way that I couldn't imagine it being. So I'm really excited for people to see that.
Super
Sorry, I
cool,
took the
super
easy
different,
answer.
super big contrast in a way that I think you want to have when you're like, oh, we finished the first biome, like what's around the corner? Like holy shit.
So cool.
Erythros, just discovered the game through Steam. Not even sure how we came across it. I'd be so curious because there've been a lot of interesting routes of people discovering. So if people have some fun anecdotes about that, would love to hear about it. Love what you guys are doing. Thank you. Only immediate issues we saw are already being addressed by you guys, which is super exciting. Appreciate it.
Yay.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Again, the feedback has been crazy helpful.
Yeah. Did you ever have to barter force people to sleep in the playtest? That's literally almost the first thing that happened. I feel like the first time we playtested it, someone tries to go to sleep and they're like, "Why isn't everybody asleep? Get back to the island right now." We were like fighting over it. It was so funny. We're like, "Wow, we're having like that experience we have in so many other
we
games."
made it, guys.
We did it. Like this feels like familiar.
Let's see. Ooh, Aussies. I'm Aussie. I have occasional lag when I'm playing the game with Nikki. Some good Aussie representation. Two groups that I'm like, holy crap, there's a lot of survival crafting players, is Aussies and Germans.
Oh yeah.
There's so many German, like, I only play survival crafting content creators. It's kind of insane.
But yeah, hopefully too, I see that, yeah, so you said you get some occasional lag when you're in the game. Eventually, we're going to support dedicated servers. So hopefully that might be a venue for you to like alleviate some of that.
Another future dev stream piece of content, because dedicated servers in particular comes up a lot. We have all of one backend engineer on our team. His name is AK.
He's awesome.
He's awesome. He's great. But we haven't had him on the dev stream yet. And we were talking about, hey, AK, it'd be great to have you come and talk about not just backend servers and some of our game plans there, but also just like how the heck backend works for a game like this. So look forward to that in future dev stream. That'll be fun. Kianos, you've answered my questions. Very happy to see you guys talking about what you're doing and how you're handling the game and the feedback you get. Thank you. I hope you're proud of yourself. That's a very nice statement. I've been
more proud after this stream.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is just a very personal statement. Our team trends toward I'm glad that went well, but like what's the next thing we have to do? There's so much left to
now
do.
Please shit on me. Like I don't want to hear this positive stuff.
I know, but honestly, the demo has gone really well. The demo's gone really well. We've had a lot of people play. We had a lot of wish lists come into the game, which is all awesome. So much valuable feedback, a mountain of valuable feedback, and something that we've been trying to do is soak in a bit of the win to put it in the fuel tank for the rest of the stuff we got to build this year.
For the harsh winter.
So thank you. It is not our natural instinct.
Yeah. Also, this question or this first time chat. Thank you. Oh my god, I'm gonna totally butcher this.
Cinderly.
Cinderly? Yeah. I played both the demo and the recent playtest, and there's a lot of cool ideas I have in mind. Are we allowed to create unofficial concept art for the game and maybe even shared in Discord? Yes, that is so awesome and nice to ask and considerate also to ask because I don't think you had to. But that's really awesome. We have actually, I think, a fan art channel too in the Discord. So I think there should be a channel, hopefully, that you can find. Yeah, our first fan art.
Cinderly, this is our first ever fan art from. Well, actually, I don't know. Is this revealing personal info? They are not North America.
Don't say too much.
Yeah. But we were so delighted to see this because this was so early. So we literally had it framed. But yes, we would freaking love to see your concept art.
That was like
awesome.
back when we had 20 playtesters, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be so cool.
Another first time chatter. The name's I can't wait to see the glider.
I think so.
Yes, excited for you to play it. There's also some fun verticality in the reef that'll be worth playing around with. And again, you're going to see it in many stages of development. So next dev stream, 2 weeks from now, is going to be a chance to see the reef before you guys can actually get your hands on it. But I think it's super worth turning out for because it's easy to be like, oh, I'd want to jump off of this and use the glider to do blah.
Yes.
Let's see. Oh my god, I missed so many messages.
I know there's a lot. Chat is popping. Need to see a larger version of the Sheep Shark fan art. We can do that.
Yeah, we can do that. Cherry, are you here? I play a lot of survival crafting games with my friend. He's Aussie and I'm German. That's funny.
Also, thanks for the follow, Cindy.
Yeah, thank you for the follow.
Wait, also, did we just hit a follower goal? Is that what that little banner meant? I'm such a boomer, dude. I don't fucking know anything about
I don't
Twitch.
know, man.
I think we just hit a follower goal. I said a number out of a number.
Hey, thank you for the follow.
Thank you.
This is so nice.
I'm
yes,
glad other people in chat know what this means.
Yeah, I don't know, man. 190 out of 190 met. Sick. Oh my god, we have a follower train.
Yeah, follower train. Wow.
Guys, we're kind of getting to the end of the dev stream. If you have other questions, super happy to keep chatting about it. But two things I want to say to you guys related to some of the upcoming stuff before we hop off. The first is we're laying out our slate for a lot of upcoming dev streams. So we want to share a couple things about those coming soon. Dev streams, we're also talking about shifting the time of day where we do the dev streams to hopefully make it a little easier for some of the European folks to tune in. Also for our teammates on the East Coast who this gets pretty late for them, hopefully be able to tune in as well. So we're currently looking at Thursdays at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, which I think is like 8 and 9 p.m. for Western Europe. I think that's right.
Something like that.
So I'll look out for info about that when we get to that timing. And then the second thing is, I think to hit affiliate, we need to stream more hours. One of the talented engineers on our team, Luke, who is on here working on UI, also made, because he draws, comics, and he was like a solo dev for a while before, like as a hobbyist before he worked here. So he kind of does everything. He's also hilarious, but you can ask him for jokes later. Drew a bunch of Twitch emotes that we really want to use. So if you see news about that later, we'll be trying to figure out sort of like a re-streaming schedule so that we can hit our hours and have those emotes around.
Wait, also, just a quick question. Do we have one planned for Dave? Because
We
it's got to be a Dave stream. You have to call it a Dave stream.
We do need a Dave stream. We do need a Dave stream. Dave, for you guys who don't know, is kind of a super person. I don't know how else.
God, it's intimidating.
D-
Dave like does everything that you could imagine, and also super well.
Yeah.
There he is in chat.
yeah.
This is actually also not the first time we fangirled over Dave. I think in a stream.
Yeah. So we do need to have Dave on a stream. I need to figure out when the schedule that can be. Dave is our tech director, who also works on operations at the studio. He is a former backend engineer that did a ton of game engineering where we worked with him on League of Legends. He also is a great improv comedian,
Hip hop dancer,
amateur volleyball player,
always down to karaoke, which is my favorite thing about Dave.
excellent singer. Um,
He has a portable karaoke set that I've tried to convince him to just keep in his car at all times because I mean, you just don't know when you're gonna need to do some karaoke, you know.
anyways, a few more members of the team to meet. I think we've probably had maybe about half of the team on stream so far, maybe a little bit more, but lot of exciting content to come.
Final Billy, that's
Karaoke
so funny.
dev stream. Oh my god.
What's it take to get Andrew on an AMA? Asking for a friend. We will have Andrew on. I think actually. He's one of the planned people to come back.
Yes. So last time he talked a lot about animation, and I think that was a really cool deep dive because it's one of those things where you can really just instantly see it and appreciate it as like a player, but then like the actual background of it is super complicated. The thing I was talking with him about is like, dude, all this material and shader work you do is also like one-to-one with things that people appreciate in game, and how it works under the hood is like crazy complicated. So I think another really good topic for stream. Karaoke dev stream. Oh my god.
We should do that. That would be so funny.
We should. There's a big portion of the team that are like stupidly good singers and musicians. We should just have them on the dev stream.
Actually, can they just do like a concert?
we also have literally some professional musicians in the chat right now. So funny. All right, guys. I think that's everything for the dev stream. So thank you guys so much for turning out so many new chatters, a ton of new followers as well. Really appreciate the crap out of it. We're gonna have new stuff to show you soon, and if you aren't part of our Discord already, please join because we're gonna be launching a brand new playtest. I think mid next week will be the next time our Discord is playtesting, and a demo update probably the week after that. Awesome, guys.
I have to put my thumbs closer in.
Thanks a ton, y'all. Great to chat. Excited to show you guys what's next. Bye, folks.